Adam looked at those before him. The large, bulky orcs glared back with bloodlust in their eyes. They wanted to fight, and awaited his command. On his motion, his new allies moved out. The marching of their heavy footsteps echoed through the confines of his base. With their help, he could bring her back. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Today, we face down the fearsome orcs. Let's see if we can uncover the origins of such a brutish foe. Most of you are probably thinking about the orcs from J.R.R. Tolkien's works, where they are depicted as a horrible race of violent man-beasts. But as you surely have seen by now, he has drawn from multiple mythologies in creating his works. So what were the orcs before Tolkien? In Latin, there is Orcus, which roughly translates as goblin, spectre, or hell devil. But the most well-known comes from the Epic of Beowulf, one of the earliest written English poems. In it, there is the Orkneys, or demon corpses. The orcs are the descendants of Cain. But another translation offers the idea of corpses from the underworld, which promotes the idea as a form of zombie. But if we look at the underworld as underground, it brings up something more akin to the idea of a goblin. Tolkien would be influenced by a book written by George MacDonald in 1871 called The Princess and the Goblin, which would inspire his depiction of the goblins, and from there, the orcs. Here they are described as looking similar to humans, but misshapen and always ugly. They were cunning and mischievous. Their cruelty was unmatched, with only enough humanity saved to tolerate each other. Between all of this information, we could assume that the term orc is meant as a variation of goblin, potentially linked back to the bugbear. But there is also the ogre, also called Orco, a large man-eating monster known for their brute strength. But there is another version coming from the Alpine regions of Austria, Switzerland, Bavaria, and Italy, and that is the orc with a K. This was a general term used for various forest-dwelling spirits and creatures, which could range from benevolent protectors to vicious monsters. So, lots of variation on this one. Potentially different individuals, as it seems to cover a variety of creatures. This variation ties back to Norse mythology as the children of Ymir, the primordial giant. So yeah, there are a bunch of different influences which brought about the idea of what an orc is. Generally, they have coalesced into a large figure with impressive strength and a generally aggressive demeanor. Tolkien's variant has a few possible origins. Most speak of corruption, usually of elves. This does tie back to Beowulf. Elves are also said to be the descendants of Cain. Part of Tolkien's idea was the corruption and perversion of evil. As it is said, evil is not able to create anything new, it can only distort and destroy what has been invented or made by the forces of good. It highlights the lack of virtue and wickedness. This allows for a simple kind of foe which can be slain without the moral dilemma of doing so. I mean, if you have your heroes cutting down other humans, it can bring up the charge of them being murderers. But if it is something which is pure evil, then there is no question, it is a good thing. And this is the benefit to such a writing tool. Now, you could call it a cop-out, but not here I think. It shows the powers and methods used by your foe. We see how Sauron, the deceiver, fights. Deception initially, and then he brings the power. He took elves, seduced them with power, and then bound them under his command. You might be wondering why orcs are said to be pig-like at times. Well, the Gaelic word orc roughly means pork or swine. Overall, the orc is a bit more surprising than you might think. They pull from many different myths and form a truly terrifying foe to face. Sadly, how they compare to humans and elves in physical characteristics is unknown. Often they are said to be much stronger than humans. But if a human can match them, we could assume that they are only on par with the most athletic individuals. Their societies are usually shown to be more warlike, a more aggressive core to their culture. While it might sound odd, but we have had cultures like that among many humans on Earth. So you can make them work. Their intelligence varies widely between settings. Some have them be intelligent. To advance their technology, it would indicate a lot of cooperative ability, and you would probably need a few which aren't warriors to dedicate their time to study. It is hard to research while on the long march. A good part of their advancement would have to come from the conquest of war. But most likely, they would need to keep some alive as slaves to teach them the technology, or just to do all the labor. But the issue of food does arise. If they are carnivorous, it could spur on their war marches. Any bread, cheese, or vegetables that they eat are mostly loot. It may not be their first choices. But while locked down, they could have a higher rate of cannibalism. I guess fight meat remains on the menu. Ultimately, they have become the manifestation of our wild and barbaric side, which must be conquered for civilization to flourish. How would you fight an orc? Let's assume they are physically stronger than you. That is going to make hand-to-hand combat difficult, but not impossible. Weapons can help focus your strength. A spear or halberd will help you increase the range of your attacks and help you stay out of the reach of the orc. Armor would be critical. Due to the strength of the orc, you would want the best cushioning possible. This means I would choose plate armor over mail or gambeson. But better yet is not to even get into close range. A bow and arrow is perfect, assuming that you can get around their armor. Now, depending on the setting, orcs may have magic, and you'll need to fight appropriately. So prepare your counterspell team. I mean, you should always assume your foe is more powerful than it is, right? But there are a few other issues to address. Orcs is plural, there will be more than one. And we have established that they are intelligent enough to form societies, which means they can build parties and even armies. We'll need to look at fighting them like we would any normal army. But there is a major concern. They will eat humans in most settings. I mean, that isn't cannibalism, right? And that is an issue. If they are willing to devour humans, they aren't as dependent on supply lines bringing in food to feed an army. No, after they slaughter the human village, butcher them up and put them on the grill, and they got a perfectly good dinner. That means that their armies won't need to have carts with them. Nope, they can just rush forward. This can make it difficult to put them under siege. First, they'll eat the prisoners, then their non-combatants. Do orcs have non-combatants? Well, they would be the next eaten, if not the elderly, if an orc is lucky enough to live to be old, which could be pretty rare in some versions. We also need to look at who their master is. Often the orc is a servant of something more powerful, and they will definitely add some factors to the fight. That will be on an individual situation. I'm going to give the orc a 3 attempt for difficulty. In concept, they are similar to humans, right? 2 arms, 2 legs. While often stronger and more aggressive, that isn't always a strength. If they get too angry, they are more prone to being manipulated. Still, orcs are going to be difficult, but nothing past an elite group of humans. Be careful with them. What do you gain when you stop the orcish horde? Well, what do they loot? That will be your first reward. And if their army has been marching for a while, that could be a fair bit. And I am sure that the local king would also reward you quite well. Oh, and you saved your country. Very good all around. But could you work with orcs? Well, sorry for the cop-out answer, but yes and no. Again, it depends on the setting. Assuming that you can, you could set up a trade and alliance with them. Who doesn't want an alliance with a physically dominating group? Now, you'll need to adapt to their naturally high aggression and warlike cultures. And that could make them poor diplomats. So let another in your party do the talking, unless you need some intimidation. As an adventurer, they would probably lean more towards the martial classes, ones where all their physical strength is put to its full use. But they could still choose others. Sadly, if they are freed from an evil force, there will be plenty of stigma against them, and that could antagonize both sides depending on how the situation goes. Adam followed the orcs from the base. Their armor glistened beneath the light of their torches. A drum sounded off into the night. Battle was at hand. It wasn't what he had wanted, but what was needed. This would be the key to saving her. Yes, it was. And he would do it. Anything it took. The orcs are a classic of fantasy. Usually a violent race with a tortured aspect. They seek to answer the nature of good and evil. They are truly terrible. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time for a war between men and elves. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.